Okay, so the aircraft itself is a little bit dusty. So I wanted to make sure it's dust free and everything else like that. Now ideally you don't want to do what I'm doing now and use a lint type of cloth, but it will do just for what we need, just for the moment. But you want to make sure you get all the dust off, everything else. Quick brush with air off the airbrush, just get all the bits off and everything else like that. Now, so we got stage one, which is this light grey on here. So what we're going to do now, we're going to come in with NATO Black. Now, I think we're using NATO Black. It's got this funny sheen to it we spoke about before. It's a sort of green tinge and everything else. But what we're trying to do here is build up layers, okay, rather than just hitting it with, you know, a straightforward, just clean the top of this off, with just a flat black or something else like that, because in reality is never spray just pure black on your model. The other thing as well, we're just going to thin this just a little bit, just so a few drops go in there. Two reasons for that. One, it's quite warm today. Secondly, we want it to all blend. We don't want to be in a situation where we've got any sort of starkness. So we just give this a good mix in the old colour cut. That's absolutely fine. Okay, then we just check our flow. So the compressor come up to power. So now what we're going to do, we'll start on the bottom and we'll just work our way around with it. So what we're going to do, to start with, we're just going to spray panels, okay? Now it might seem a bit funny, but we're doing it very random, but we're avoiding panel lines and things like that, because what we want to do is sort of blend in. Okay, so do ones like this, on the side, this edge. Okay, some of these in the middle. Okay, we're quite a high air pressure, and as you see, it's not particularly neat or anything else like that, because all we're trying to do here is a sort of a effect rather than go round. So it's looking very patchy and very mottly, but what we're going to do is come along with another coat to take care of that. All we're trying to do is break up this unity of black. Okay. There we go. Going around everywhere. So there is front. Okay, I've got to do this here. Okay, so it's looking pretty blotchy, shall we say? Okay. Then what we're going to do is go around then and just put a light coat right the way over everything. Now the idea with this is, obviously we get the starkness and the lightness all comes through, but it's finding that level where you get it to how you want it. So the idea is, you might be able to see it now, it's looking very sort of blotchy, okay? And when you're working with black, it's really hard to see what you can see. But you're sort of into this thing of, okay, perhaps a little bit too much. Just going to knock it back. Okay, a bit of trouble with the airbrush. Okay, and you're pulling it back now to where you're happy. So hopefully you can see we've got a little bit of blotchiness going on, and it's broken down that unity of being grey or anything else like that, and that is the thing with it. So we'll just let that dry a second as we take care of a couple of other bits. We're just going to hit the extractor, which would help if we turned it on at the wall. Okay, there we go. So we're just going to do the same thing as we did to the others. So, and then over the top, make sure you do tops, edges, bottoms, things like that, so you get that sort of nice blotch effect, for want of a better word. Okay, so we're just going to touch more goes in, NATO Black in the top, good colour mix round. And as this dries, like all pre-shading and things like that when you use it, it should give you changes as it dries as well. So you might be able to see now how well the camera is actually going to pick this up, but we've got this sort of blotching effect going on now. Okay, now what we're going to do, we'll make that more defined shortly as we go round doing other areas. So what we're going to do, we can touch it now. Nice and dry, handy of using acrylics. So we're going to do exactly the same again. Okay. Whoops, we definitely don't want to do that. Okay, spillage on the wing, don't panic. Okay, pat, dry, don't rub, just pat. Okay, then pat again. Check to make sure you haven't got any gum underneath. Okay, because how many times has this happened to us all? Okay, so it's just a patting motion. Now it's on there. What you want to do is, a little thing, make sure you haven't got any paint underneath your colour cup, gone around the top and everything else. To be honest, just me, got too much in, and I don't put a cap over the top. Check your flow, happy with it. And then go right over the top. And you should be able to blend this in. If you give it quite a wet coat, there we go, gone. So don't panic when that happens, okay? Just keep in mind that nothing's ever a problem. Okay, so we're just going to do centers of panels, exactly the same as we just did. Don't forget, you cannot go wrong with this. This is one of those areas where it doesn't matter. Okay, nice and blotchy, absolutely everywhere, and then same thing again. Light coat going down over the entire model, because you're trying to do a sort of blending action with it all. Make sure you get these edges done. And we're out of paint. I think we need a new filter. But there we go, that's it. Round 2. As I said, we'll let that dry. Okay, once it's dry, then hopefully we can come back in. Just turn that over. We can come back in then and do a little bit more detail. So we can do. Okay, so next up is the decaling. So we're quite happy with our top coat has dried completely. Now, big thing is, if you're using things like Johnson's Clear, glosses in general, things like that before, because this was really flat, it's still got quite a bit of texture. I've only put 2 coats down, admittedly 15 minutes apart. Big thing to remember though is let them dry. Okay, don't try and decal within a couple of hours, because what happens is it gets milky, because the softeners and things like that, and even just water, reacts with the actual gloss that's down there, gets in amongst it and makes it milky. So if you've ever had that thing where you, especially on dark colours, it will stand out really bad, is that if you're doing something like here, you put your decal down, it dries no problem, then afterwards you get quite a white film all the way around it. It's because it's got into that clear coat. So let them dry, patience, and go through it, everything else like that. So, Micro Set and Sol, usual thing for me, I always put a bit of a dollop in the water. It's warm water, i.e. not hot. Stick your elbow in it, babyify it, okay? Then what we got is we're just going to have a couple of brushes, which make sure you're clean, you haven't got anything on them, especially solvents, all right? We'll just put them both in soak just for a moment. cotton buds, always a good idea. I know we've covered this a lot before, so we just have a pop one or two on here. So decal sheet themselves, we're going with a kit one. So to be honest, as you can see, there isn't exactly a lot to this, all right? So all we've got is literally a handful of decals. So what we do, we'll put on some stars and bars just to show you, then I'll carry on afterwards. But as I said, there isn't many on here. They tend to be quite low-key markings, as you'd imagine on a stealth aircraft. So I do it like this, and then we have our spring-loaded clamps, so we've got somewhere to hold it. Downside, push down in the water, let the bubbles come through. Depending on the length, age of your decals and who makes them, you know, sometimes 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30. What I tend to do is where you can see through it, i.e. all the whiteness has gone from the paper, normally then you can get it off. What I tend to do then, bring it over to your desk, pop it down here into like a puddle of water. If you haven't got a lot of water down there, just add a little bit more. Okay, it can sit down there and start to manoeuvre. Then what you can do at the same time, obviously you can go around and as they're soaking and get some more out. You don't have to worry about them when they're down there because they're not going to go anywhere, okay? If it's sitting in the water, you might have that thing where they suddenly float off. Okay, so we've got some more stars and bars. Again, we're just going to grab them, hold them down. You see them all fuzz and fizz and everything else, always a good sign. If it's older decals, you know, you may need a little bit more, okay? So same thing into the pool of water. You can see the difference on them quite clearly. So now what we're going to do is just pull one out. Now we know where they go on here. They're going to fit just down in here, all right? So what we're going to do, we just check all our areas. If you have got good references, now as you can see, it's pretty textured, this surface. It's not a glossy surface by any stretch of the imagination, okay? So all we do, we just lift one up and then we just place on. Now one of the things we're going to do is try and kill these down a little bit, okay? I want to dull them down, but we are going over a very heavily flat area still. It could have done with a little bit more gloss on this. Okay, we're just going to move it up a little bit, looking at the references. And this is one of those things. So we know it's flat to the aircraft. Because of all the angles on this, it's very hard to work out exactly where flat is. So if you sort of hold it flat in your hand, level at the bottom, you should be okay with that. So that's on there now. Now, something I'm going to do a little bit different, because it's a heavily flat, we've got our normal plaster that. This is our brush, just been in soak, so what we did, just give it a clean to make sure it hasn't got anything on it. But we're going to actually not going to roll it to get rid of the water. We're going to put the solution right over the top, okay, and it's moved. So we're just going to reposition, okay, and we're fine. But you can probably see the way that this is running out, that it's got this very flat texture and it's just made off, alright? Now the idea with putting this on with water is so that this gets right underneath and it drags it down. The only time you really want to do that is in a situation like this where it is particularly nasty. So switching over brushes, back to the wet one. This side I don't think is quite as bad. Okay, so in again. Okay, making sure we've got the balance right, making sure they're level. Okay, and then we're just going to look down now. Just want to nudge this one up a little bit so we're all flat. Okay. And then same again, in with our fluid, pushing over. You should notice the difference even as you push through. Okay, so what we're going to do now is carry on going around the rest of it everywhere. As you can imagine, there's lots of little ones on there, but not many compared with a lot of modern aircraft, so it's not going to take long, about half an hour. Just remember, if you get running out of places to hold, with me, I tend to going to leave the wings free completely for the minute to everywhere else on the model, and then do those last, because then I've got something to hold on to, or down the back. But I think even on the back down here, you've got the one for the arrestor cable system that comes down. You've got an arrestor hook, and it's got some warning things on there. So there we go. Alright, for the moment, we'll get all of them on, come back together, we'll talk about flattening them down, weathering them, okay, and then post-shading and weathering and really start to bring this together. Okay, so there we go. Moved on just a tiny bit. So we've got the actual completely done, deckled, everything in. To be honest, the decals didn't go down exactly brilliantly, but we are going over a very tough surface. Little tip, extra thin glue. Okay, now I know what you mean, and I have got a confession, which I'll show you in a moment. One pass and leave it, okay? Do not go back, okay? Don't do what I did here. And you might be able to see I've gone back and it has pulled it, because what happens is it actually melts the decal and then it's dragged it. I think I'll probably get away with it with a bit of weathering and everything else. Then this actually had a coat of, here it is, the polyurethane flat varnish. Now this is sprayed at maximum air pressure you can get out of it, okay, which in my case I reckon is round about, realistically, about 28 psi. It says 32, but I think it's not actually as high as that, okay, and then literally from a distance, a foot away, and put down 3 or 4 coats. Now this is like sandpaper now, but what it does do, as you can probably see, is give this a terrific flat dead finish, or dead flat finish even. Now the trouble using the polyurethane paint is, as you might see, little white flecks everywhere. What happens is it's drying as it's airborne occasionally, and you'll get little flecks, and it's like cobwebs coming off of it. It gets on, sticks to your paint, and then you can't rub it out. So what you need to do is grab an old brush, okay, and give them a good rub, and then that actually gets underneath them and flicks them out 9 times out of 10. Okay, it's always exception to the rule, so I've got one here and I can't lose it. But you get the gist of it. If not, you can get in there with a little blade and take care of it, but it will get rid of all these little white flecks that are all over it that look a little bit like dust, but it's not, and it's pretty tough stuff. But you can probably see this bottom, we have no real reflection. You know, you think you've got now getting on for 2,500 watts of light here that we use in the studio. To me, this is dead flat. There is no shine in this whatsoever. I know you've got a tiny bit there, okay, but this has given us our totally flat finish. Now, we've also done the tails, as you can see, they're all done, painted in, and everything else. But what we have lost is that slight contrast that you used to be able to see between the two. You've still got a little bit going on, okay? But what we want to do is sort of reinstate that a little bit. So, I'll do it over here. Just get a couple of bits of paper towel just to stop it going everywhere. It's not going to go too far. But what we're going to do is come back with our original colour and very carefully just pop some around, because this paint that we're using, which is this earth, alright, let's open this up, which is this NATO colour, is actually more like a satin. So what this will enable us to do is just to put in some little shiny spots. Now, obviously, avoiding your decals, because you don't want to go too close to them. But what we're going to do is just do the raised edges. Okay, and what this will hopefully do is bring us back that shine we were talking about before, because we have lost that. So all we're doing, and we don't have to be particularly neat, is just popping along and putting it back in. And I'm hoping what it will do then, it will just give us that slight little bit of contrast that we need. Okay, so we're going to do leading edges as well. Just popping them along. A little bit of sticking here. The paint's a little bit thick to do thinning a bit, but we need it to be a little bit warm. So anywhere there's an angle, we're just going to pop this back in, and hopefully it will just give us a slight shine to these areas. Okay, and it will help us break it all up again. And you don't want them to be too sharp, so what I'm trying to do is sort of make them a little bit bigger, but we're just going to pop around some panel lines, but as I say, the paint is not liking this at all today, so what I'm going to do is just going to add a few drops of thinners into the mix. Okay. just to try and kickstart this a little bit because it's extremely warm, and just spraying the Vallejo paint neat, it doesn't like it. So we're just going to blow that through so we get the thinner stuff coming through like that. Clean your needle. That's better. Okay, and we can go again. Okay, we're just going to walk it around some little areas. So we're almost doing a sort of form of post shading in here. Okay, so hopefully it will bring in, you can see it a little bit on camera, I know it's a bit tricky to see, but hopefully this will give us what we're after again. Okay, and then you can obviously pick out panels and give them a quick spray. This one's up here, these over here, because the flatness will be slightly different to what we had before. Okay, and it should, well, hopefully, give us what we're trying to get back. Also, if you haven't got any small marks, perhaps from decals, things like that, you can take this opportunity to put them back in. Okay, leading edges always have a flat run right over them. Okay, then as we did exactly before, we're just going to give this a small little coat right the way over, just to blend through, okay? And you can go right over the decals because it's only a very quick pass. And all we're trying to do is flatten down again, as we did before, to give us this nice flat finish to everything. So we're just going to do the same on the other side. But by doing this as well, doing these edges, it'll just hopefully bring everything back. Again, just going to very lightly putting this over just to flatten everything. As you can see, going right over decals here, and it's not affecting anything too much. Okay, and it's just giving us that nice dead flat texture, and also going over the decals to just kill them down a little bit. Okay, so there we go. Dry that down. Okay. And there we go. Now the other thing that should happen now, with any luck, it is like a variable sandpaper, which does give us our nice dead flat finish to this. Now, what you can do if you want to is knock up a little bit of basically a satin coat would be a nice touch, and just go around now and play blending. Okay, so what you're actually trying to do is make shiny spots and flat spots. Now the way I'm going to do mine is to literally pop a little bit of the matte varnish in with a small mix of what we've got already. Actually, I think I'm going to try a little bit of gloss because that matte is very, very matte. So what we're going to do, we're going to make up a tiny little mix. So I'm just going to put, starting off with some thinners, because we want it all to blend, okay? Thinners goes in, 3 drops of white, 2, just trying to think what we need it, 8, 2, I'm going to say 6 drops of black, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oops, a bit carried away there, never mind, it'll be okay, 2, a small dollop of polyurethane gloss, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I know that sounded a bit technical, but really it doesn't matter what you put in here. But what you've got to do is make sure it's got a good mix. And already that's not brilliant because it's far, far too light. Okay, and I've got white flecks in here looking in the colour cut, which we know is obviously where the white paint doesn't like what it's gone into. So what we're going to do is just up the the black, because we've got more light grey in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Okay. I'm going to try and darken this up. So what we want to be is 1 or 2 shades, a bit more darker than the lighter, sorry, than the original colour that's on there, but it's going to give us a nice contrast. Okay, now I've got trouble with the white because the white has got little flecks in it and it's not mixed brilliantly in here. There again, we'll give this a whirl, see what we can come up with. What I'm going to do is thin it even more. It looks a little bit thick to me. So we're going to come in and thin this, because don't forget, the more you thin, the more it blends, okay? The thicker the paint, the less it will blend, and then you're going to end up with changing the colour. We don't want to change the colour here. All we're trying to do is go for an effect. Because all we're going to do is reverse what we did. So hopefully the shinier stuff, here. So we've got this type of colour going on. Now I'm not sure if it's going to work, so I'm going to do the underside. Okay, so all we're going to do is try and blend in the middles of panels now. We've done the outer side, now we're just going to try and cause a shadow on the inside just to lighten things up. Okay. We're trying to make this tonally a little bit different, as I say, without changing the world here. Okay, but it gives us that flat area. Hopefully the camera's picking this up, because actually I'm liking this quite a lot. Because we're trying to bring back that mottling that we lost before we started messing around with decorating. Okay, so hopefully that's worked very nicely. So we'll try it on here. As you can see, there's no rights or wrongs to this. It's literally laying down colour. And blending in. Okay, there we go. Happy with how that is. Usual thing, dusty pass right over everything, because this will keep us off flat. And as you can see, it's not making any difference as we go through, but now we just got that very nice flat look to everything. So again, just pop it down here. Okay, there's that one, and I'm just going to pop a little bit over these tails. One. Okay, that will stop there. Always know when to stop. A little bit cloudy in here, we'll have to get this spray paint going. But there we go, that completes our very nice weathered in area. Now, there is a technique you can use, and I was going to use it, where you can put black wash into your airbrush and put it on in your paint. Thing is though, I've done it without the need, so that's pretty much why. And I've got white paint on my hand now, so we're going to have to get rid of that quick before you touch this. But hopefully you can see it gives us a very, very nice dead flat finish to your model. Okay, we haven't got any shine on this at all, just like the real thing. So by the time we get the tails fitted on it, not only does it give us a slightly worn look, but also it'll give us a nice flat look to it as well. So next up, we're getting ready with the gear. Get going on that. We're going to get the wheels painted. We're going to get the main gear. It's already been painted white, but obviously we're going to detail it up and everything. Get the bomb racks fitted. Everything else we can get it unmasked now because we're not worried about putting any more paint on this. Okay, and we can really start bringing it together.